If all of these are worse than
At the bottom of
then this Pokemon right here. Look, I don't even know what these are. The mollusk tier list? Never heard of it. We watched Corey at the beginning of the show.
Mollusks are one of the most diverse factions in the entire game. Indeed, much more diverse than I think most players realize. They are extremely popular both among casual and competitive players, with some builds demanding incredible...
Hold up, is an octopus in here? Because I swear I just ate your cousin 2 days ago, bruh. Squid ink pasta? Delicious, all right? Now, if you're in the S tier, I apologize.
...of skill to pilot, while others are practically AFK. And with so many different potential mollusk builds to choose from, it can be difficult to know which builds are actually competitively viable in the current meta. So today, we're going to go through the mollusk tier list. While I attempt to cover as many of the popular well-known builds as I can, mollusks are an extremely broad category, second only to arthropods in terms of number of individual members. So inevitably, some are getting left out of this video for the sake of time. Still, by highlighting standout builds in both the high and low tiers, hopefully I can give you a good understanding of where the mollusk faction fits into the current metagame, and we'll be able to
Bro, Octopus definitely got to be here, and it's S tier. Prediction.
Fill in the gaps for yourself. But before we dive into the tier list, what is a mollusk? And what are their common attributes? Mollusks are a huge group, encompassing all gastropods, all bivalves, and all cephalopods.
Okay.
While every group has its outliers, most factions at least have some consistency in their base stats. Birds tend to have pretty high mobility, mammals tend to have high intelligence, arthropods high defense, and so on. With mollusks, though, it's pretty hard to pin down any obvious through line. Pick any one stat and you can probably find a mollusk both at the top and bottom of the charts.
Wow.
But one thing you will not find is a mollusk with basic middle-of-the-road stats. While the numbers and combinations will vary greatly between builds, one thing I've noticed is that just about every mollusk has something extreme about it, with at least one stat being either incredibly high or abysmally low. But anyway, given just how hard it is to generalize them, we may as well just dive straight into the tier list.
Common slug.
F tier, we have the common slug. Now, while this build may look like it has all the downsides of the snail without any of the benefits of the snail's protective shell, yeah, it's pretty much exactly what it looks like. The garden slug genuinely has some of the worst stats in the entire game.
That's crazy.
With even its best stat being fairly mid. Its only defensive ability is its slime, which does help ward off attacks from insects. It's a double-edged sword though, as their slime also leaves a trail, making slugs one of the easiest builds in the game to track down. Now, I will admit, there are some advantages to not having a shell, the main one being that slugs can slip through much smaller cracks, and hide underground much more easily.
Oh, that boy hit that
U-turn! Since they need to come out to feed anyway, this doesn't really help them avoid predation all that well. So with all these negatives and pretty much nothing else going for them, the snail without a shell is going in F tier.
Common
Next
clam.
in F tier, we have the common clam.
See, clams, I haven't eaten you yet, okay? This sounds mad crazy. I haven't eaten you yet. I've seen you as an option on the menu. I always go for your other fish brothers. Shrimp, crab legs, octopus. All right? You give me some octopus and some vegetables. Good eats.
A build that exemplifies the extreme stat lines I was talking about to a T. With no eyes, terrible movement abilities, and no attacking moves, and no brain, the clam has to rely on only two stats, both of which are quite high. The first is their stealth, on account of the clam's surprisingly decent burrowing ability. By wedging themselves into the seabed, they can stay out of sight from most potential threats. But if an enemy manages to find them in spite of this, the clam has some of the heaviest armor of any mollusk, being able to deflect some pretty substantial damage. But with no ability to counterattack or escape, eventually a persistent attacker will deal enough damage to spell game over. Well, okay, technically clams can move, but I mean, come on. In the current meta, this just isn't enough.
But like, if they have no brain, what is the purpose of living? Like, you got no eyes, no brain. What are you doing?
Worse is that even though clams can burrow down to hide, in order to survive they need to filter feed, and to do that, they must poke their most vulnerable weak point above the surface of the seabed, giving away their hiding spot and opening themselves up to a devastating
GG's, buddy.
hit. At the top of F tier, we have the common snail. The garden snail has most of the same weaknesses as the previous 2 entries on the tier list, but slightly less severe. Snails are every bit as slow and non-threatening as slugs, but they do at least have a shell to help block attacks. They can even use their shell to shield bash attackers in a pinch, though this doesn't do much damage. However, similar to the clam, because of how slow their movement speed is, and how weak their counterattacks are, eventually an aggressive player will be able to punch through their defenses. So they're not the worst of the worst, but compared to some of the unique and powerful abilities we'll see higher up on the tier list,
in F
the
tier.
basic snail
That is the
build
worst
just
of the
isn't
worst.
going to cut it.
The scallop.
Of
I done had some scallops before, okay?
D tier,
when Namor decide to team up with Aquaman and they bring the sea creatures to land, they're finding me first, bro. My KD on them is crazy. All right? Oh, man.
Have the Scallop. The Scallop is essentially a more decked out version of the Clam. Though it has a lower base defense stat than the Clam, its weaknesses are also much less pronounced. Instead of being completely immobile, Scallops oddly enough have the jet propulsion ability, something usually only found in cephalopods and box jellies. Though it has a high cooldown, this ability gives them an escape option if they're ever under direct attack, something every other build on this list so far desperately needs. Of course, being able to flee from battle wouldn't do them much good if they couldn't see attacks coming. But thankfully, Scallops also spec into primitive eyes, enabling them to detect predators and reposition themselves accordingly. In theory, anyway. One of the issues with simple eyes is that even the most basic stealth techniques, such as, for example, moving very slowly, can get past their danger sense, resulting in Scallops getting regularly bodied by starfish. So, while they're definitely a bit more versatile than some mollusks, I can't give them too much credit. Next, in D tier, we're going to have the first of the cephalopods on our tier list, the chambered Nautilus. The Nautilus is a slow-moving, armored scavenger build that sustains itself mostly on detritus and carrion that is sunk to the bottom of the sea. While being able to swim while rocking a tough shell is impressive, their terrible swim speed shows just how power-crept this ancient build has gotten. Their perception stat is also pretty mid, especially for a cephalopod, which on average have some of the best vision of any marine build. The Nautilus used to be a much more popular build until seals and sea lions were added to the game, as their high agility and armor-piercing bite gave them a crushing matchup versus the Nautilus. So, while it is impressive that the Nautilus has made it through some of the roughest balanced patches in the game's history, the fact that they were driven to the depths by seals doesn't scream high tier to me. First in C tier, we have the Geographic Cone. This marine snail...
Yo, if your name is a cone, easy lick in the animal kingdom, bro. Gotta be.
Build rocks pretty much all the same strengths and weaknesses as your average snail, with one major exception. This snail can one-shot just about anything. The Geographic Cone has a venomous harpoon which it uses to hunt fish, but it can also use it to defend itself in a pinch. Now, the Geographic Cone is still incredibly slow and really not all that stealthy, so actually landing a hit on a fish is a bit of a challenge. Still, this is one gastropod you really don't want to underestimate. The cone snail's harpoon pierces armor, so any starfish main who thinks that all mollusks are easy pickings is in for a rude awakening.
Dumbo
Next
Octopus.
in C tier, we have the Dumbo Octopus. This is one of the strangest cephalopod builds in the entire game, and lacks a lot of the signature abilities players normally associate with the octopus. But it also has a mix of other unique traits that normal octopuses don't. You see, the Dumbo Octopus is a deep sea build, and on that server, the normal stealth techniques simply don't apply. Color changing and ink clouds aren't going to do a player any good when most of the major threats aren't relying on vision anyway. So even though those abilities are what the octopus is best known for, unfortunately the Dumbo Octopus has to find other ways to remain hidden from predators. And unfortunately, this means it needed to make even more trade-offs. Rather than using jet propulsion, which is a conspicuous and turbulent, but incredibly effective movement ability, the Dumbo Octopus swims using large fins on the side of its mantle. This is significantly slower, but a great deal stealthier too. This makes it too slow to catch fish, but it's still able to thrive off of its winning matchup versus crustaceans. Its webbed tentacles are perfect for surrounding and capturing targets on the seafloor. So definitely an interesting build, but by having to sacrifice so much of what makes the octopus so overpowered,
Cinders was
the
a banger.
Dumbo Octopus is...
Cinders was a banger. F1 was better. All right.
Definitely.
I definitely think Cinders is gonna win best scene. I don't know if that's like an Oscar worthy thing, but best scene definitely going to Cinders. Best movie though, F1.
One of the lower tier ones. And at
Bobtail
the top of
Squid.
C tier, we also have the first squid on our list, the Bobtail Squid. This is another cephalopod which uses a fairly unorthodox ability to boost its stealth. As one of the smallest cephalopods in the game, the Bobtail Squid really cannot take any hits. So,
crazy.
in order to avoid most of the ocean's major threats, the Bobtail buries itself during the day and only comes out at night. However, even under cover of darkness, the Bobtail Squid would still be at risk of being attacked. Though it's somewhat counterintuitive, on a night where the moon and stars are unobscured, detecting another player in the water isn't as hard as you might think. The shadows they cast in the water are highly visible and give away a player's location immediately, making it very easy for predators lurking below to strike. The Bobtail Squid deals with this by specking into an extremely rare and strange ability, bioluminescence. It may seem backwards to hide by glowing, but doing so obscures the squid by removing its shadow. Of course, this does make them easier to detect from above, but attacks at night from seabirds are much less common. The bobtail may have the lowest stats of any cephalopod, but its unique and creative way of hiding in plain sight keeps it out of the low tiers. I can't give it too much credit though, because while its strategy for stealth at night is clever, honestly it's not that good at hiding during the daytime, having a seemingly worse ability to camouflage itself due to its bright coloration. At the bottom of B tier, we have the
Bruh, listen. Let me tell you something.
Itself due to its bright coloration.
Hold on, we're gonna get it right this time.
Having a seemingly worse ability to camouflage itself due to its bright coloration.
If all of these are worse than
at the bottom of
then this Pokemon right here. Oh Lord Jesus. This is B tier?
B tier, we have the leaf.
This look like one of them Pokemon you don't use your Pokeball on. Its evolves are trash. All right. Hit markers, garbage. Why am I about to put you on my lineup? All right.
Sheep, a sea slug with a truly unique ability called kleptoplasty.
F1 versus Sinners who win? F1, bruh. I'm saying it, F1. Go see that movie when it come out. You gonna know.
Leaf sheep is able to absorb the chloroplasts from the algae it consumes, essentially stealing the algae's photosynthesis ability. This ability generates XP passively over time, allowing them to grow, heal, and regenerate their energy without eating. It's hard to overstate how game-breaking this ability would be if it weren't on a character with otherwise pathetic base stats. For a human, this would basically be like if sitting in the sun provided you with the same benefits as eating well and working out. Unlike some of the sea slugs higher up on this list, the leaf sheep doesn't really have any defensive abilities. But if you want a character that is extremely forgiving in terms of the resource management side of things, the leaf sheep may actually be the best build in the game for anyone looking for that chill casual playstyle.
Giant squid!
Pretty much the exact opposite
Hold up, this what we make calamari out of? Boy, listen.
End of the spectrum, next in B tier we have the giant squid. Now obviously this thing's HP stat is extreme, with it being the largest mollusk in the game. But one thing I bet you weren't expecting was for it to also have the highest perception stat of any mollusk.
Oh my god!
I mentioned before that in the dark depths of the ocean, the normal stealth mechanics don't apply. Well, the giant squid is the exception to this. Its eyes are so large, the largest in the game in fact, that even with only a tiny fraction of a percent of sunlight making it to the depths, the giant squid can still see. This is bad news for all the deep sea builds that assumed camouflage wasn't necessary and spec'd their character accordingly. This incredible eyesight is necessary for more than just hunting though. Being gigantic unfortunately makes you extremely easy to detect via echolocation.
Facts.
So they have to remain vigilant constantly to avoid being ambushed by the abyssal servers.
Yeah, I don't know how this is not S tier.
Luckily,
bro.
their vision has a range just barely more than that of the whale's sonar. So as long as they're on top of their game, they should be able to outmaneuver and avoid attacks. On this
Colossal Squid. Yo, the stats on that giant squid. Pat. Colossal Squid.
Same tier, I'm also going to include the Colossal Squid, which has many of the same traits as the giant squid.
Massive size, deep sea habitat, gigantic eyes, strong beak. Predatory tentacle grab.
Including
arrest this squid. Predatory. You're done.
Massive eyes and incredible dark vision. The Colossal Squid does have a few subtle differences in its kit though.
Hold up, no. There's no way it's that big.
Massive eyes and incredible dark vision. The Colossal Squid does have a few subtle differences in its
Yo, that looks like a freaking SUV.
Kit though. It's slightly heavier, but also less mobile, relying on ambushes using its 2 extra long arms to capture prey, as opposed to the giant squid's more traditional method of rushing down a target.
Hold on, excuse me. Let me
with an array of tentacles. The Colossal Squid also has hooks on its arms, which do more damage and can inflict bleed buildup, making them much more dangerous for whales to attack. making up for their slower swim speed. However, at the end of the day, both the giant squid and...
Boy, yo, this is where all the calamari come from. This joint says a colossal squid can grow up to 23 feet. That's like a school bus. Off and weigh as much as 1,100 pounds. Yo, we need to start breeding these. We'll have calamari for days, bro. I ain't gonna lie to you.
Colossal squid have terrible matchups against whales, and because of their large size, their energy upkeep costs are insane. So they have to play pretty much a perfect game to avoid getting smoked. Both are powerful builds if you know what you're doing, but not without their limitations.
And that's B tier. Deep sea
dragon. At the
dragon.
bottom of A tier, we have another sea slug, the blue sea dragon. Similar to the leaf sheep, this slug also has the power to copy the ability of its main food source. But in this case, the blue dragon isn't consuming algae, it's consuming jellyfish. The blue sea dragon is able to absorb the venomous nematocysts from the tentacles of their prey, and in doing so, gains a massive buff in the form of an equally deadly sting at the tip of its frills. This is incredible, as the blue sea dragon is able to gain the most powerful ability of the jellyfish faction without any of the awful downsides,
It
like
can breathe out
being
of
literally
water?
brainless and having no control over their own movement. Blue sea dragons also have much better stealth than a lot of sea slugs, using the counter shading technique with a bright underbelly.
Counter what?
Also have much better stealth than a lot of sea slugs, using the counter shading technique with a bright underbelly and dark blue backside, making them hard to see both from above and below. While not quite as OP as some of the cephalopod mollusks, the blue sea dragon definitely stands above all other slugs and snails as a unique
Yo, they
and
got mad A
formidable
tiers,
outlier.
bro.
Next in
Common
A tier, we have the
octopus.
common octopus, a solid representative of the octopus faction as a whole. It possesses the core abilities that define the octopus build, along with its inherent vulnerabilities. Its two standout strengths are stealth and intelligence. The common octopus boasts some of the best stealth in the game, capable of changing both its color and texture to blend seamlessly into virtually any environment: dense weeds, jagged rocks, or barren seabeds. And if its camouflage fails and it's ever spotted, it can deploy an ink cloud to temporarily debuff the attacker's perception stat, usually buying enough time to escape.
Oh my goodness.
However, escape is often its only viable option, as the octopus has some of the lowest defenses in the game. With no armor whatsoever, any hit it takes can deal devastating damage.
Oh, that's tough.
Even in a server as perilous as the ocean, where threats abound regardless of armor, the common octopus must play cautiously. Bites from everyday fish can pose a serious risk, so despite its impressive abilities, it requires careful strategy to survive. Speaking of bites though, one lesser known but important ability the octopus has is venom, which it delivers via a bite with its sharp beak. Finally, now's as good a time as any to say that although it's not a combat weakness, the octopus's biggest
Yo, that looks like my well, you know.
weakness is its low lifespan. Given that a lot of the octopus's best tricks need to be learned, either by observation or trial and error, the octopus's already powerful intelligence would be a lot more powerful if the devs allowed it to be refined over the course of a few decades, like dolphins, parrots, and humans get. This weakness is pervasive through the entire cephalopod faction, which is interesting because some of the other mollusks are pretty much the exact opposite. But yeah, this is why despite their many overpowered abilities, it's hard to give any cephalopods a top tier rank unless they're truly broken in even more ways than usual.
Bro, how the squid not broken?
Ranking
Giant octopus.
slightly higher in A tier.
Yo, I might be wrong, bro. I said octopus was S tier. I don't know what could be above octopus in this family.
Giant octopus adapts on the octopus archetype
They
with
eating
one
sharks?
minor tweak, trading some stealth for greater strength. While it retains the ability to change color and texture to blend into its surroundings, and can deploy an ink cloud to escape threats, it's less adept at stealth than the common octopus due to its larger size, which makes it more noticeable when moving. However, this trade-off comes with significant advantages. Its above-average bulk gives it a wider margin of error in confrontations. Unlike the typically less brawny octopus builds, the giant
What?
octopus boasts impressive physical power, with arms capable of wrestling
bald
mid-sized
head,
sharks
that's crazy.
and a beak that deals substantial slicing damage, in addition to being venomous. It also shares the same high intelligence that other octopuses do, enabling it to tackle problems and improvise solutions on the spot. Though it shares the same lack of armor as other octopuses, leaving it exposed to heavy damage, the giant octopus's
they
enhanced strength
boxing?
and unique abilities more than offset its reduced stealth, marking it as a force to be reckoned with.
Alright. Okay. The Humbult Squid.
Next in A tier we have the Humbult Squid, also known as the Red Devil. The Humbult
The red what?
Humbult Squid is the wolf of the ocean. It doesn't have the best stats in any one category. It's not the fastest, it's not the largest, and it's not the deadliest. However, it is well above average in all of those categories, and that, plus some impressive hunting tactics, makes it one of the most fearsome mollusks in the game. During the day, Humbult Squid mains hang out in the deep sea out of sight. But as it gets dark, the hunt begins, and the squid rise from the depths to attack. They hunt in packs, coordinating with each other via pulsing red and white light. These feeding frenzies can tear through schools of fish in an instant, and then return back to the depths before
Look how they're
ghosts like the
moving!
dolphin can arrive to challenge them. Now, obviously, communicating with light pulses has the disadvantage of giving away your location.
Of course.
So faster characters will usually be able to avoid getting caught in the frenzy. But still, the fear factor alone of getting caught surrounded by large glowing red squid has to earn it a spot.
No, I gotta see that in real life, bro. You see, imagine you're like scuba diving and you see squid start pulsate. Bro, what? Listen, send me to the gulag, bro.
An A tier.
I'm ending game. I'm out of there. The
And
mimic
last in A
octopus.
tier, we have the Mimic Octopus. The Mimic Octopus is a smaller mollusk with below average stats for its archetype.
Crazy stealth, though.
However, the Mimic Octopus uses its color change ability in a truly unique way, to shapeshift into the form of other marine characters. In doing so, it can trick other players into misplaying in many different ways. The most obvious strategy is just to mimic a character with a powerful venomous ability, like a lionfish or sea snake. This will cause predators to leave you alone for fear of getting stung or bitten. But this technique can also be used on offense to trick a target into a false sense of security, by mimicking something less dangerous like a starfish or flatfish. Now, while this is all extremely impressive...
Yo, what is an S tier? Yo, if this is not S tier, yo, imagine like you could either scare away big things by mimicking something that can kill them, or you can lure in weaker things by mimicking something they think they're stronger than. This gotta be S tier, bro.
It's worth noting that the Mimic Octopus's options are fairly limited. It's most
tough.
effective at mimicking characters that already share its black and white stripe appearance. When it attempts to mimic something else, it's admittedly a lot less convincing. And if their disguise fails, their below average base stats leave them in a pretty vulnerable position should an
they're
enemy
cooks.
attack.
They're cooks.
A high skill, high reward technique, and one that deserves some pretty high recognition, but one that's also easy to overestimate. It's clever, but not quite broken. Okay, we've finally reached the S tier.
Alright.
If you've watched up until
Literally
this
from
point
FNAF,
and are
true.
enjoying the video, I'd really appreciate it if you took a second to subscribe to the channel. Thanks. At the bottom of S tier, we have another small mollusk.
This
with
gotta
blue
be
accents,
poisonous.
the blue-ringed octopus. This is one of the smallest octopus builds in the game, but you wouldn't know it if all you saw was its power stat. The blue-ringed octopus has the deadliest venom of any mollusk, even deadlier than the Geographic Cone. Its venom is the same neurotoxin found in pufferfish.
Bro, whenever you see blue in nature, venomous, bro. Do not go. Blue is like the worst color you ever want to see appear on any animal.
Can one-shot almost anything within only a few minutes. Because of the blue-ringed octopus's insanely high damage, this build opts for the aposomatism technique, where rather than attempting to hide from predators using camouflage, when threatened, it instead boldly asserts its presence with vibrant neon blue markings all along its body. In doing so, it is essentially flexing on other predator players, saying it has
I
no
will
reason to
kill
fear
you.
them and daring them to make a move. This strat is common among players with powerful toxic abilities, and most players quickly learn that bright colors mean danger.
Yup.
Now, one of the usual drawbacks of this ability is that it dramatically cuts the player's own stealth stat. While this trade-off makes sense when it comes to scaring off predators, if you're a predator yourself, this makes the task of catching prey harder, as they'll be able to see you coming more easily. But because of the octopus's innate color change ability, the blue-ringed octopus is able to switch its intimidation ability on and off, allowing it to remain stealthy when it needs to. Now, of course, because it's on the small side, there's always a chance an opponent could overwhelm the octopus and take it down before it had the chance to counterattack. But more often than not, this small octopus is turning the tide on anything that dares challenge it. While it's definitely a
that's
glass
tough.
cannon, the blue-ringed octopus's incredible stats and unique ability to subvert one of its major weaknesses earns it a spot in S tier. And on the topic of subverting weaknesses,
The
next in
coconut.
S tier we have the coconut octopus. This is the octopus build with the highest intelligence stat of any mollusk, and the only one that makes tool use a core part of its strategy. The octopus's biggest weakness is its pathetic defense stat, and this was actually a direct nerf to overpowered cephalopod builds of the past. Many cephalopods used to have thick, sturdy shells like other mollusks did, way back during the Ordovician expansion. By using their incredibly high intelligence and tool use ability, the coconut octopus is able to regain access to heavy armor by equipping the shells of defeated scallops and clams. This makes them much less vulnerable to being picked off by a random attack from a fish or bird. In addition, kind of similar to the mimic octopus, most players don't have their guard up around a clam, so the shells also provide excellent cover to ambush opponents from. And after scoring a win, they can retreat to the safety of their shell to avoid getting it stolen, similar to leopards dragging their food up into trees to avoid hyenas. But shells aren't the only tools the coconut octopus has learned to incorporate into its combat repertoire. Using its water siphon, it can also launch debris at fish, making them one of the only builds in the game with access to a ranged attack. This is excellent at dealing chip damage without leaving the safety of the shell, meaning they don't fall into the same trap as clams by relying on defense with no means of counterattacking. Overall, this is truly one of the most impressive showcases of tool use in the entire game.
Bro, ain't no way they picking up... Bro, listen. One of these octopus pick up a kombucha bottle and hit a shark. Bro, they could probably kill an orca whale with a kombucha bottle, bro. They might take over the ocean.
Other than humans, as it legitimately subverts one of the weaknesses of the typical octopus build without sacrificing any of the perks. An easy S tier rank. And now our final S tier, the Cuttlefish. The Cuttlefish has a number of impressive stats, including quite literally the highest stealth stat in the game. It has the most advanced version of the color change ability, and is able to swap between colors at such an incredible rate that it can basically animate its skin. This means that in addition to standard camouflage, the Cuttlefish can also use its appearance to confuse and hypnotize its prey,
That's
or
crazy.
startle and intimidate its predators. Though it may not have the ability to fire projectiles like the coconut octopus, its grappling arms give it a deceptively long reach, often catching players off guard and setting them up to get comboed into the Cuttlefish's venomous bite. Even though the Cuttlefish has no abilities which buff its defense.
Hold up, all these octopus and squid got venomous? No. Listen, I might need to stop eating. I might be dying low-key.
Actually landing a hit on this agile and mesmerizing character is genuinely one of the most difficult things in the game. Their speed stat is a lot closer to that of a squid than an octopus, even though the rest of their abilities all align much more closely to the octopus. The Cuttlefish combines the most powerful...
Yo, look, my man
had
the ability list so long it went off the list.
Abilities all align much more closely to the octopus. The Cuttlefish combines the most powerful elements from both the squid, like high maneuverability and long reach, and the octopus, like intelligence, venom, and color changing, into one overpowered build. And for that, I'm ranking it as the #1 mollusk in the game.
That's crazy.
And that's the tier list.
Bro, low-key, like, this whole thing could have been S tier. Not gonna lie, most of these could have been S tier. Maybe not the blue thing. But the rest of these four, definitely could have been
Overall,
S.
the viability of mollusks is super inconsistent. Best cephalopods are truly busted, but the faction is also filled with a lot of suboptimal jank and AFK farming builds. So there really is something for everyone here, from meta tryhards to low-tier heroes. Now, knowing which traits and abilities to invest in can be a difficult choice. Luckily for you, I've partnered with the game's Cell to Singular.
Okay, listen. I might need to look up a little bit more. I went to Whole Foods the other day. They had like a decent amount of octopus, $12, bro. Might go get some more today, but I need to do a little bit more research with all this venom and poison and, you know what I'm saying, they got. All right? Because I might be cooked. Y'all make sure y'all spam GG in the chat if it's over.
So when the metal hit his mug, he just sunk in place. 100K Holla, chillin' Bahamas. Come home to your crib and throw in your mama.